The spaceship descended through thick clouds that looked like blood mixed with rust. Commander Teo stood inside the landing chamber, looking at the screens that showed the angry red sky of Karath 7. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 months. The planet was supposed to be dead, completely dead. No life, no hope, nothing worth exploring. But the government wanted to check it one more time before they closed it forever. Teo was not a young man anymore. His face showed lines from years of space travel, and his hands were steady from years of doing dangerous things. He had explored 15 planets before this one. He had seen things that would make ordinary people scream. But this planet made him feel strange. Something was different about Karath 7. He could feel it in his bones. Dr. Hei Wan walked into the chamber. She was the scientist who studied plants and animals from other worlds. She was smart, very smart. She had studied more alien life than anyone else on the ship. Her eyes were red from working too long without sleep. She carried a small machine that looked like a box with many lights on it. This machine could tell if air was safe to breathe or if it would kill you in seconds. "The readings are very bad," Hei Wan said to Teo. She pointed at the small screen on her machine. "See these numbers? This one here shows poison gas. This one shows more poison gas. And this one shows even more poison gas. 17 different types of poison in the air. If we breathe this air without protection, we will die. Our lungs will fill with poison, and our hearts will stop. We will be dead in minutes." Teo nodded. He had heard this many times before on many planets. The Vantis Coalition, the group of aliens who worked with humans, had told them the same thing days ago. Karath 7 was a dead world. The atmosphere was toxic. Nothing could survive there. Jiho came through the door next. He was the communications specialist. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with quick movements and quick thinking. He was good at his job because he could understand aliens from many different worlds. He could speak their languages and understand their strange ways of thinking. "The Vantis are getting worried," Jiho said. He held a communication device in his hand. "They are asking again if we want to cancel the mission. They say the poison air is too dangerous even for humans. They say we should go back to the ship now." Teo looked at both of them. "We came here to do a job. We came here to check this planet and take samples and make observations. That is what we will do. We will wear our suits. The suits will protect us. We will be careful. We will work fast. And then we will return to the ship. This is simple." The 3 humans put on their heavy suits. These suits were made of special material that could stop poison air. They could stop acid. They could even stop radiation. The suits had tubes that brought clean air to breathe. The suits had lights so they could see in the dark. The suits had tools and weapons and cameras. The suits were like small spaceships for humans. The airlock door opened. The red sky appeared before them. It was not like the sky on Earth. It was not like the sky on any planet they had visited before. The red was not a nice red. It was an ugly red, like something broken or sick. The clouds moved slowly across the sky, and the wind made sounds like crying. They walked down the metal stairs from the ship. Their boots made clicking sounds with each step. The air around them was thick and heavy. Even inside their suits, they could feel that something was wrong with this place. The ground beneath them was not rock. It was powder, like ashes. It was the color of old bones. Alarms started to scream inside their suits. The machines that checked for poison were going crazy. The numbers were jumping up and down. Danger, danger, danger. The word appeared again and again on their suit screens. "Return to the ship immediately!" A voice came through their communication devices. It was the Vantis captain. His voice sounded scared. "This is too dangerous. Return now." "That is an order." But Teo did not return. He walked forward. His suit made beeping sounds with each step. Hei-Wan and Ji-Ho followed him, but they were scared. They did not know what their commander was going to do. After 100 steps, Teo stopped. He reached up to his suit. His hands moved to the neck seal of his helmet. HFY made a noise of fear. Jiho shouted into the communication device, but Teo did not listen to him. Teo opened his helmet. The poisoned air of Karath 7 entered his nose. It entered his mouth. His lungs filled with toxic gas. He coughed. The air was thick and heavy and wrong. It tasted like metal and like burning things. It smelled like the worst parts of the biggest cities on Earth. It smelled like pollution and car exhaust and factory smoke. It smelled like Beijing during rush hour. Tayo's grandmother had lived in Beijing for 50 years. She had lived in that city when the air was so thick with poison that people could not see across the street. She had lived there and worked there and raised children there. She had told young Teo stories about the bad air, about the days when the sky was so dark it looked like night in the middle of the day. She had told him that humans were strong enough to survive things that looked impossible. Teo stood there and breathed the poison air. His body shook. He coughed again. His eyes watered. His throat burned. But he did not fall down. He did not stop breathing. His body kept working. The communication device made sounds of shock and confusion. The Vantis captain was shouting questions. HFY was shouting for Teo to put his helmet back on. Jiho was quiet, very quiet, too shocked to make words. But Teo kept breathing. His body started to do something strange. He could feel it inside him. His lungs were working harder. His immune system was fighting the poison like the poison was an enemy attacking him. His cells were changing, adapting, learning how to survive. It was like his body remembered something that his mind did not know. It was like thousands of years of human survival were working inside him right now. After 5 minutes, Teo put his helmet back on. But he was still breathing. He was still standing. He was still alive. "It is fine," he said into the communication device. His voice was calm. "The poison air is not so bad. It smells like Beijing during rush hour. My grandmother told me humans are stronger than we think. I think she was right." In the ship, the Vantis Collective received this message. The Vantis were crystalline beings, made of materials that looked like glass. They did not have skin or lungs or hearts like humans. They could not understand how a human could survive what should have killed them. It was not possible. It was against everything they understood about biology and survival. But Teo was still breathing. The impossible had just happened. And on Karath 7, under the angry red sky, a human commander stood breathing toxic air and smiling at his own survival. The future of the galaxy was about to change, and nobody yet understood how important this moment would become. Dr. HFY moved around Teo like a person watching something impossible. She had brought every machine she had. She had brought tools that could look inside the human body. She had brought machines that could see things smaller than the smallest thing. All of these machines were now connected to Teo, making him look like a person with many metal fingers touching him. The numbers coming out of the machines did not make sense. HFY read them again and again. She checked the machines to make sure they were working right. They were working right. The machines were telling the truth, but the truth was impossible. "Your blood cells are changing," she said to Teo. She pointed at a screen that showed moving pictures of his blood. "Look here. Do you see these cells? These are your white blood cells. They are supposed to protect you from sickness, but your white blood cells are doing something I have never seen before. They are attacking the poison gas molecules. They are breaking them down. They are transforming the poison into something your body can use. Your immune system is not trying to fight the poison. It is learning from the poison." Teo did not feel any different. He felt like himself. His body did not feel wrong or broken or strange, but HFY's machines were showing him that he was changing from the inside. Jiho stayed outside the ship for a longer time than Teo. He wanted to know if he could also breathe the poison air. He wanted to test himself. He removed his helmet and breathed the toxic air for 10 minutes. Then he breathed it for 30 minutes. Then he breathed it for 1 hour. At the end, he was coughing and his throat was very sore, but he was alive. His body was also changing, adapting to survive the impossible air. Messages started to go back to Earth. Radio signals traveled through the empty space between the planets. Scientists on Earth received the message and could not believe it. They checked and rechecked the information. It must be a mistake. It must be wrong. Humans could not survive poison like that. But the message kept saying the same thing over and over. Humans were surviving on Karath 7. Professor Kim Hay was a very old scientist. He had studied human biology for 40 years. He was at a big research center on the station that orbited Earth. When he heard the message from Karath 7, he put down his coffee and started thinking very hard. He began to read old human history books. He looked at information about pollution on Earth. He read about cities where people had lived in very bad air. He read about factories where workers had breathed poison for their entire lives. He read about deserts and mountains where humans had survived in places that should have killed them. He read about how humans had lived in places where animals died, but humans kept living. Slowly, an idea started to form in his mind. Maybe human adaptation did not start on Karath 7. Maybe it started a long time ago. Maybe it started in the ancient cities of Earth. Kim Hai worked with other scientists. They looked at human genetics, at the instructions written inside every human cell. They found something very interesting. In human DNA, there were marks from thousands of years ago. These marks showed that humans had survived in bad environments. Every time a human survived breathing bad air or living in extreme temperatures or dealing with pollution, something inside them changed. Their children inherited this change. Their children's children inherited the change. Generation after generation, humans had become tougher and more able to survive bad environments. It was like human survival was recorded in their bodies. Every person who had lived in Beijing when the air was toxic had passed down a tiny bit of adaptation to their children. Every factory worker who had survived poison air had passed down resistance to their children. Every person who had lived in polluted cities had made their children slightly stronger. The scientists now understood what had happened to Teo. His body had not learned to survive the poison air by itself. His body had memories. Those memories were in his DNA, written by thousands of years of human survival. When he breathed the poison air of Karath 7, his body recognized something familiar. It recognized struggle. It recognized the need to adapt, and so it did. This was not magic. This was not science fiction. This was science fact. This was evolution and adaptation and human survival working together. Hei-Wan continued her measurements for 3 days. She watched as Teo's body continued to change. His lungs became stronger. His respiratory system became more efficient. His blood became better at carrying oxygen, even when the oxygen was mixed with poison. His cells were mutating, but the mutations were making him stronger, not weaker. Ji-Ho also continued breathing the poison air. By the 3rd day, he could walk around outside the ship without his helmet. He could spend hours breathing the toxic air. His body was also adapting, just like Teo's body was adapting. But not all humans adapted at the same speed. When other crew members tried to breathe the poison air without protection, they got very sick. Their bodies did not have the same genetic memories that Teo and Ji-Ho had. They needed more time to adapt. They needed to work slowly, building up their tolerance step by step. Hei-Wan sent her data back to Earth with a detailed report. The report was long and full of complicated words about biology. But the simple truth was this: humans were the most adaptable species in the galaxy. Humans could survive in places where nothing else could survive. And Karath 7 was not the first place where humans had done this. This was just the first time scientists were watching it happen so carefully. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Humans could survive poison air. humans had hidden abilities in their DNA. Humans were stronger than anyone had believed. Radio stations talked about this discovery. News channels showed the information to millions of people. The idea started to spread that humans might be more important to the galaxy than anyone had thought. But the most important thing was simpler than that. One human had removed his helmet on an alien world. He had breathed air that was supposed to kill him, and he had survived. He had proven that human beings were made of something stronger than science had believed. They were made of survival. They were made of adaptation. They were made of thousands of years of humans who refused to give up, who refused to die, who kept living in bad situations until their bodies learned how to win. Teo looked at his hands. He did not see anything different. But he knew something inside him had changed. He knew that his body was now a weapon. Not a weapon for war, but a weapon for survival. And this weapon would change everything. The news about Karath 7 traveled through the galaxy like wildfire. Every government, every trading company, every scientific organization received the information. Humans could survive poison atmospheres. This changed everything about how the galaxy understood the universe and about who had value in the cosmic community. Before this discovery, Karath 7 was considered worthless. The planet had been marked on maps as dead, do not visit, no value. The Vantis Coalition had decided 70 years ago that the planet was not worth exploring. They had said the atmosphere was too toxic. They had said nothing could survive there. They had filed away Karath 7 as a dead world, and nobody had thought about it since. But now people realized that Karath 7 was not dead. It was just waiting for humans to come. Under the toxic red clouds, there was something precious. 1,000 years ago, the Karath civilization had lived on this planet. The Karath were not alive anymore. Nobody knew what had happened to them. Maybe they had left the planet. Maybe they had died out. Maybe they had gone to live somewhere else in the galaxy. But they had left things behind. They had left buildings. They had left machines. They had left technology. They had left records and history and knowledge from a civilization that was very advanced. For 1,000 years, these treasures had been safe from theft. No other species could breathe the air on Karath 7, so no other species could steal the Karath civilization's secrets. Now suddenly, humans could walk on Karath 7 and take whatever they wanted. The ancient Karath archive, containing knowledge about technology and history and science, was now open to humanity. The Vantis government sent messages to the coalition government. They wanted to talk about what should happen now. The Zelmonics, who were a species that looked like tall insects, also sent messages. The silicon-based Krethnai sent messages. Every powerful species in the galaxy was suddenly worried about humans. A meeting was called. All the governments of the coalition sent their best representatives to a large space station. The meeting room was huge. There were seats for representatives from 23 different species. This was the most important meeting that had happened in the galaxy for 100 years. The Vantis ambassador spoke first. She was a female Vantis, made of blue crystal that sparkled with light. "We must discuss the new situation with Karath 7, she said. "The human discovery of their ability to survive toxic atmospheres is changing everything. We must establish rules and laws about who can explore what planets. We must make sure that this does not give humans unfair advantage." A Zelmonic representative stood up. He was tall and had 6 arms. Each arm moved separately, showing different emotions. "The humans cannot explore Karath 7 alone," he said. "The Karath technology must be shared among all species. If we let humans have all the Karath knowledge, they will become too powerful. They will dominate the galaxy." The Krethnai representative did not speak with words. It sent chemical signals that were translated by machines. The translation said, "Humans are primitive. They should not be given access to advanced technology. This would be dangerous for galactic stability." The human representative in the meeting was named Secretary Dong Su. He was an older man with gray hair. He had represented humanity in galactic politics for 30 years. He listened to all the arguments against humanity. He did not become angry. He did not become defensive. He simply waited for his turn to speak. "I understand your concerns," Dong-su said calmly. "You are worried that humans will become too powerful. You are worried that we will dominate exploration and resources. You are worried that this will change the balance of power in the galaxy. I understand these concerns. But I want to tell you something about human history." Dong-su brought out a display. On the display, there were pictures from Earth. There were pictures of ancient Earth cities with bad air. There were pictures of factories with thick smoke. There were pictures of deserts and extreme mountains. There were pictures of humans working in all of these places, surviving, building civilizations, creating knowledge. For thousands of years, Dong-su explained, humans lived in places that were hostile to life. We did not have the help of other species. We did not have advanced technology. We had only our bodies and our determination. We built great cities in places where the air was poison. We created knowledge in places where survival was the main goal. We did not retreat from difficult environments. We adapted to them. He pointed at a picture of old Beijing. This city had more pollution than anywhere else on Earth. For many years, the air in Beijing was so thick with poison that people could not see across the street. But the people of Beijing kept living there. They kept working. They kept building. They adapted. Their children adapted. The adaptation was recorded in our genes. This is why Tayo can breathe Karath 7. This is not an invention. This is not something we created in a laboratory. This is survival. This is human evolution responding to the needs of the moment. The room was quiet. The representatives from different species looked at each other. "You say this is unfair advantage," Dong-su continued. "But how is it unfair? We did not choose to adapt this way. We did not ask for this ability. We simply refused to die when survival was difficult. If your species had also lived in poison environments for thousands of years, your species might also have this adaptation. This is not cheating. This is the price of history." Captain Dae-sung was standing at the back of the meeting room. He was the leader of the military forces for the human space exploration program. He was a strong man with a serious face. He had been sent to this meeting to represent human power. He did not speak, but his presence sent a message. Humans had military strength. Humans had determination. Humans would not back down from challenges. The Vantis ambassador made a proposal. "Perhaps we should restrict human access to certain planets. Perhaps we should make sure that each species has equal access to resources. Perhaps we should not allow humans to have advantage." But then something surprising happened. The Zelmonics ambassador spoke. "I do not support this proposal," he said, making his 6 arms move in ways that showed disagreement. "If we restrict humans because they are adapted to survive poison, then we are restricting life itself. We are saying that evolution should be punished. I do not believe in this. If humans can survive poison air, then humans should explore poison planets. This is simple logic." Other representatives began to agree. The meeting became a debate. Some wanted to restrict humans, some did not. But in the end, the representatives decided that human exploration rights could not be restricted. It was unfair to limit species based on their biological abilities. The meeting ended without new restrictions on humans. But the galaxy had changed. Everyone now understood that humans were not primitive or simple. Humans were the species that could do what others could not. Humans had value that nobody had expected, and more planets with toxic atmospheres were being discovered every day. Human explorers would soon be walking on dozens of worlds where only humans could go. Dae-sung led the first big expedition to Karath 7. The expedition included scientists and soldiers and engineers and workers. They brought equipment to dig and explore and learn. They began the process of opening Karath 7 to human civilization. The treasure of the Karath civilization would soon be in human hands. The power balance of the galaxy was shifting. And it had all started when one commander named Tae-o removed his helmet and decided to trust his body's hidden abilities. The first 3 months on Karath 7 were very difficult for the human team. 100 volunteers had come to the planet to test how much human bodies could adapt. They came from different parts of Earth. They came from different genetic backgrounds. They were all different ages. Dr. Yejin was leading the team. She was an engineer who specialized in environments that were harsh and deadly. Her job was to find out how far humans could go in adapting to Karath 7. Yejin created a plan based on human history. She had studied how Earth athletes trained at high altitude. She had studied how workers in factories slowly adapted to dangerous working conditions. She had studied how humans in extreme environments learned to survive. She used all of this knowledge to create a training program. The program worked like this. On the first day, the volunteers wore full protective suits that had air inside. On the second day, they wore suits that filtered the poison air and mixed it with clean air. The mix was mostly clean air with only a small amount of poison. On the third day, the mix had more poison. Day by day, the mix changed. More poison, less clean air. The body was learning slowly how to handle the poison. The volunteers worked outside for short periods. 1 hour on the first day, 2 hours on the second day, 3 hours on the third day. The work was slow and careful. Every volunteer had machines that watched their body and checked their health every minute. If someone's body was not adapting well, they could stop immediately. Some volunteers could not handle the process. Their bodies rejected the poison air. Their immune systems could not adapt fast enough. These volunteers had to go back to the ship and then return to Earth. They were not weak. Their bodies simply did not have the same genetic memory that Teo had. They needed different times to adapt, or they could not adapt at all. But most volunteers did adapt. After 1 week, they could breathe air that was mostly poison. After 2 weeks, they could breathe air that was completely poison. After 3 weeks, they could work outside without any protective equipment at all. They could breathe Karath 7's air freely. Their bodies had learned. Their immune systems had learned. Their lungs had learned. They had become adapted beings. Teo set a remarkable record. He spent 48 consecutive hours outside without any protective equipment. He walked around the Karath archive and looked at ancient buildings. He studied old machines. He tried to understand what the Karath civilization had built. The toxic red air of Karath 7 did not slow him down. The poison that should have killed him in minutes was now simply the environment he worked in. His body had changed so much that scientists studying him noticed something extraordinary. Teo was not just adapting, he was transforming. His cells were mutating at a very fast rate. His DNA was rewriting itself. His respiratory system was becoming something new, something that had never existed before. He was becoming a new kind of human. He was becoming Karath human, a human adapted to an alien world. Yejin watched all of this with wonder. She had trained soldiers and workers, but she had never seen adaptation like this. It was faster than natural evolution. It was faster than she had predicted from her calculations. It was as if thousands of years of human survival were working inside Teo's body all at once, guided by his will and his determination. Other volunteers who could breathe the poison air began working on projects. Some dug into the ground, looking for minerals and crystals that had value. Some explored the ancient Karath buildings, looking for technology. Some studied the strange plants and animals that had adapted to Karath 7. The toxic atmosphere that had killed all other species had allowed unique life to evolve on this planet. Humans were now seeing these creatures for the first time. By the end of the second month, 53 volunteers could work outside without protective equipment. They were the first generation of humans born to an alien world. They were the first humans adapted to survive on a planet that should have killed all human life. Radio messages went back to Earth. Scientists looked at the data and could not believe what they were seeing. Human adaptation was happening too fast. It should not be this fast. Evolution usually took thousands of years, but Yejin's program had accelerated it. The combination of gradual exposure, genetic memory, and human determination had created something new. More volunteers came, 50 more, 100 more, 200 more. Ships brought humans to Karath 7. Some adapted quickly, some took longer, some never adapted at all, but the total number kept growing. The human population on Karath 7 was becoming real. This was not just an exploration mission anymore. This was colonization. Humans were beginning to build a permanent presence on an alien world. The Vantis coalition noticed this expansion with worry. Other governments noticed it too. Humans were not just visiting Karath 7. Humans were settling it. Humans were making it their own world. This change in human activity meant that the galaxy's power balance was shifting faster than anyone had expected. Captain Dae Sung and his military team set up camps and storage facilities. They organized the volunteers and workers. They created systems for mining the precious materials found on Karath 7. They created pathways through the toxic landscape. They prepared Karath 7 for humans to live there permanently. In the ancient Karath archive, something was discovered that changed everything. Ji-Ho found a chamber full of crystal storage devices. These devices contained information. They contained knowledge recorded by the ancient Karath civilization. The information was about technology and mathematics and physics and biology. It was about how the Karath had built their civilization. It was a library of knowledge waiting to be discovered. The humans began translating this information. They worked with linguist Min Hai, who had a special gift for learning alien languages. Min Hai studied the Karath symbols and sounds and gradually began to understand what they meant. The knowledge contained in the archive was incredibly advanced. The Karath had technology that was far beyond what the coalition had developed. Yejin realized something important. This technology would be useless to other species because other species could not survive on Karath 7 to use it. But humans could. Humans could live here and study this technology and use it. Humans could become the masters of this advanced knowledge. This meant that humans, once considered primitive by the coalition, would soon have access to technology far greater than any other species had. The poison air that was supposed to be a barrier had become a gift. It had become a lock on a treasure chest. Only humans could open the lock. Only humans could use the knowledge inside. Karath 7 was becoming humanity's greatest resource, and nobody could take it away. Months passed. The colony on Karath 7 grew larger and stronger. Humans adapted faster and faster. The mutation process that had seemed slow at first was accelerating. It was as if human bodies were learning not just to survive on Karath 7, but to thrive. Humans were becoming natives to an alien world. They were becoming part of Karath 7, and Karath 7 was becoming part of them. Ji-Ho stood in the vault of the ancient Karath archive and laughed. Not a laugh of happiness, but a laugh of amazement. He had just finished surveying the 17th new mineral deposit that his team had found in the last 2 weeks. The geological surveys showed that Karath 7 had riches beyond counting, metals that existed nowhere else, crystals that could store more information than any computer created by the coalition, elements that could be used to build technology more powerful than anything anyone had ever imagined. Behind Ji-Ho, Min Hai worked at translating more Karath information. She was a young linguist, maybe 28 years old with quick eyes that saw patterns in language. She worked with machines that helped her translate, but the real work came from her brain. Her brain could see how languages connected. Her brain could understand meaning even when the words were strange. "This section here," Min Hai said, pointing at a screen full of alien symbols, "is talking about material science." The Karath had discovered how to manipulate matter at the atomic level. They had technology that could reshape elements. They had technology that could create new materials that had never existed in nature. If we can understand this technology, we could build things that would be impossible now. The humans on Kareth 7 were now doing the work that no other species could do. They were exploring, they were discovering, they were learning. They were opening the treasures of an ancient civilization. Meanwhile, every other species in the coalition was watching from outside. They were watching through telescopes and sensors. They were watching humans work on a planet they could never reach. They were watching humans gain knowledge they could never access. The Vantis were the most worried. The Vantis had been the most powerful species in the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had the best technology. They had the strongest government. They had the most resources. But now, they could not reach Kareth 7. Now, they were dependent on humans to tell them what was found there. The Vantis did not like being dependent on anyone. A diplomat named Velshorn from the Vantis government sent a message to the coalition's Senate. The message proposed something that made humans angry. Velshorn wanted to restrict human exploration. Velshorn said that humans were too primitive to handle advanced technology safely. Velshorn said that the coalition should limit how much humans could explore and how much knowledge humans could take from Kareth 7. Velshorn said this was necessary for galactic security. The message was discussed by many species. The Zelmonics said they supported limiting humans. The Krethnai said they supported limiting humans. Other species supported it too. There was a movement to keep humans from having too much power. The coalition's Senate scheduled a vote. They would decide whether to restrict human rights on Kareth 7. Professor Kim Hae from the Research Center on Station Prime watched all of this from Earth. He was angry. He was very, very angry. He had spent his life studying human biology and human history. He knew what humans were capable of. He knew what human survival meant. And he knew that restricting humans now would be wrong. When the Coalition Senate met, Kim Hae sent a message. The message was delivered to Secretary Dong-Su, the human representative. Dong-Su read the message carefully. It contained facts about human history. It contained information about human adaptation. It contained everything that Kim Hae had learned about how humans survived. Dong-Su stood up in the Senate chamber. The room was full of alien representatives from 100 different species. Dong-Su spoke clearly and powerfully. "You want to restrict humans," he said. "You want to say that humans should not explore certain planets. You want to say that humans should not have access to certain knowledge. You want to say that humans should not be allowed to develop certain technologies. You say this is for security. You say this is for balance. But I tell you the real reason. You want to restrict humans because you are afraid. You are afraid that humans will become too powerful." The Senate was quiet. Dong-Su continued. "But I want you to understand something about humanity. For 10,000 years, humans lived in environments that were poisonous. For 10,000 years, humans lived in cities where the air could kill you. For 10,000 years, humans lived in places where survival was not guaranteed. We did not retreat from these places. We did not say, this is too hard, and give up. We built civilizations in these poisonous environments. We created knowledge in these deadly places. We survived." He showed images of ancient Earth cities with thick smog covering everything. He showed pictures of factories with poisoned water and poisoned air. He showed pictures of deserts and frozen mountains where humans lived and worked and created culture. "This is not something we did with technology," Dong-Su explained. "This is not something we did with help from other species. We did this alone. We did this with our bodies and our will and our determination. And over thousands of years, this survival was recorded in our genes. This is why Teo could breathe poison air that would kill any of you. This is not an invention. This is not genetic manipulation. This is evolution. This is adaptation. This is the result of humans refusing to die, even when death seemed certain." Kim Hae transmitted more information to the Senate. Information about how pollution survivors had passed their tolerance to their children. Information about how factory workers had gradually built stronger lungs. Information about how desert dwellers had developed special ways of surviving heat and dry air. Information showing that human adaptation to Karath-7 was not new. It was simply the continuation of millions of years of human survival. You say we should be restricted because of advantage, Dong-Su continued. But how is this advantage? Did we ask for this ability? Did we create this in a laboratory? Did we cheat? No. We simply have a history of refusing to die. If your species had lived in poison environments for thousands of years, maybe you would also have this adaptation. You cannot punish humans for having survived. You cannot restrict life for surviving. Captain Dae-Sung, standing in the back, made sure everyone could see that humans were ready to fight for their rights if necessary. His presence sent a message without words. Humans would not accept restrictions. The vote happened. The proposal to restrict humans was defeated. More species voted against it than voted for it. The Zelmonics changed their mind and voted against restriction. The Krethnai stayed away from the vote. In the end, human exploration rights on Karath-7 were guaranteed. No restrictions, no limits. Humans could explore as much as they wanted. But the most important victory was not the vote. The most important victory was that the galaxy now understood something new about humans. Humans were not primitive. Humans were not dependent. Humans had power that came from survival, not from technology or weapons. Humans had the power of thousands of years of refusing to give up. On Karath-7, Jiho continued his surveys. He found more minerals. Minhai continued her translations. She unlocked more secrets of the ancient Karath civilization. Humans were claiming their place in the galaxy. They were taking the treasures that had waited for 1,000 years. They were becoming something more than they had been before. And on Earth, young people watched the news and made decisions. They decided to come to Karath-7. They decided to become adapted humans. They decided to be part of something new. The wave of human exploration was beginning. It would change the galaxy. It would change history. And it had all started because one commander believed that his grandmother's stories about surviving poison air were worth more than fear.